mobilizations in rejection of police repression and the neoliberal policies implemented by Argentine President Javier Milei continued. On Thursday, Russian defense forces liberated Sucha, a key town for Ukrainian forces in the Kursk province. On Wednesday, the United Nations Special Rapporteur Michel Faki warned that the Zionist regime of Israel is carrying out an unprecedented famine campaign in the Gaza Strip. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. The mobilizations in rejection of the repression and neoliberal policies implemented by Argentine President Javier Milei continued. Citizens' spontaneous manifestations took place in the Plaza de Mayo in Buenos Aires city to reject the adjustment policies of the Argentinian president after a day of criminal repression against the citizens. In the last hours, Judge Karina Andrade ordered the release of the 114 people detained during the repressive operation where citizens were attacked by federal forces with pepper gas, tear gas bombs and water trucks. In Argentina, at least 20 people were injured during this repression on Wednesday afternoon, including a photographer. Photojournalist Pablo Grillo was wounded in the head by a tear gas canister fired by the security forces. Grillo works as a freelancer and was recorded images of the march of the retired together with soccer club supporters to the National Congress headquarters. According to declarations of the journalist's father from Ramos Mejia Hospital, after undergoing emergency surgery, the situation is critical and his prognosis is reserved. In Argentina, the Madres de Plaza de Mayo Association denounced the brutal police attacks against the retirees demonstration and demanded the release of all detainees. Through a communique, they reiterated that Madres de Plaza de Mayo repudiate the criminal, unjustified and illegal repression carried out by the national government with the active participation of the police of the city of Buenos Aires. They concluded by stating that we demand from the government and the judiciary the immediate release of the hundreds of detainees, the clarification of the serious crimes committed in the repression, planting weapons, executing a militant and press worker, beating without limits, arresting without cause, and that the exercise of the sacred right to protest be warranted. Argentine Workers Central and Argentine Workers Central Autonomous repudiate police repression in front of the National Congress and calls press conference. In a statement published on the social network X, they declared the violence unleashed against the demonstrators who decided to massively support the just demands of the pensioners and the organizations accompanying them is the absolute responsibility of the national government in general and of Patricia Bullrich in particular. In Argentina, the Association of Photojournalists as ARGRA demands the resignation of the Minister of Security of the nation, Patricia Bullrich, after the intense repression that the country is experiencing. Through a statement issued through the social network X, they reported that today our former student at Association of Photojournalists, Pablo Grillo, has been violently and seriously injured by security forces. It was not because we did not warn about how dangerous Patricia Bullrich was and how he was wounded and his life is in danger, because there was not a single political, institutional or judicial spring to put a stop to her murderous and demagogic impertinence. The reporters demand Bullrich's resignation in an indeclinable manner. Association of Photojournalists demand that the President of the Republic immediately remove her and her subordinates from office and place her and her subordinates at the disposal of the justice system. If this is not done, we make him morally, politically and criminally complicit in the crimes committed by his minister. The president of Colombia, Gustavo Petro, stated that he would place his government in the hands of the people by calling a popular consultation. The Colombian head of state informed that the future of the labor and health reforms is in the hands of citizens through the holding of a referendum. Petro noted that the people have the power through mobilization and consultation, and pointed out that if the people cannot express themselves, then there is a tyranny. President Petro made the announcement in the framework of an institutional clash because the refusal of Congress to pass the labor and health reforms promoted by the government with support from the Colombian society. Regarding the Colombian Senate's verdict, several social organizations mobilized to the National Congress headquarters in defense of the labor reform, in addition to condemning the initiatives that could threaten labor rights. Some spokespersons demanded the recovery of the rights of the working class, such as the labor nature of the apprenticeship contract. They claim that Colombian Congress seeks to favor the employers only through the exemption of the corporate monetization.
Today we are going to march in a peaceful and civilized manner in defense of this labor reform that is so important, not only for Colombians but for all apprentices from the National Training Service, because it contains 2 articles where we are seeking the liberalization of the apprenticeship contract. That is, we are seeking once again that apprentices from the National Training Service be subjects of law and be considered workers with a minimum wage, with social benefits and social security. But also in one of the articles we are seeking that the monetization quota be increased to 1/5, which was approved in the Congress of the Republic and in the House of Representatives, and today we were looking for this to pass to the Senate and be approved.
Since yesterday we have been marching for the labor reform so that it is not removed, because even when our parents, our grandparents remain silent, today we are going to raise our voices so that we have the right to a labor contract, so that we have the right to service benefits, so that we have the right to have vacations, layoffs, pensions, and so on. Exactly, we are not only speaking only as the National Training Service, but we are also here representing workers like my mother, like my family, like workers who have been working their tails off for years to earn at least a minimum wage in this country.
And now we have a short break coming up, but first remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates and more. We'll be right back, stay with us. Welcome back. In Barbados, Prime Minister Mia Motley addressed the issue of the United States' threats on countries that receive Cuban medical brigades in their territories, while highlighting the labor of Cuban medical personnel.
Matter with the Cubans and the nurses should tell us everything that we need to know. Barbados does not currently have Cuban medical staff or Cuban nurses, but I will be the first to go to the line and to tell you that we could not get through the pandemic without the Cuban nurses and the Cuban doctors. I will also be the first to tell you that we paid them the same thing that we pay Bajans, and that the notion, as was peddled not just by this government in the US, but the previous government, that we were involved in human trafficking by engaging with the Cuban nurses, was fully repudiated and rejected by us. Now, I don't believe that we have to shout across the seas, but I am prepared, like others in this region, that if we cannot reach a sensible agreement on this matter, then if the cost of it is the loss of my visa to the US, then so be it. But what matters to us is principles. And I have said over and over that principles only mean something when it is inconvenient to stand by it. Now, we don't have to shout, but we can be resolute. And I therefore look forward to standing with my CARICOM brothers. I wish I could say brothers and sisters, but brothers, to be able to ensure that we explain that what the Cubans have been able to do for us, far from approximating itself to human trafficking, has been to save lives and limbs and sight for many a Caribbean person.
In Cuba, the 4th edition of the International Patria Colloquium will be held from March 17th to 19th at the University of Havana. This edition, under the slogan "We are People's Waving Networks," will bring together in the Cuban capital experts, activists and managers of the sphere from more than 60 countries to reflect, share experiences and coordinate actions in favor of counter-hegemonic communication. The event, which will be dedicated to the 20th anniversary of the multi-state channel teleSUR, has among its objectives the reclaim the memory of political communication in the South, analyze the influence of digital platforms on political participation and the configuration of power, identify challenges and generate proposals for an ethical and liberating use of technology. The President of Bolivia, Luis Arce, announced 10 temporary measures to address the fuel supply problem, including the implementation of continuous working hours in the public and private sector. The head of state emphasized that all these measures are aimed at improving the organization of Bolivian society, supporting production and taking care of the national economy. He also pointed out that as a national government, they did not and will not take measures against the people and their patrimony, since these do not solve the problems the country is facing. In this sense, President Arce instructed to reduce the use of the automobile fleet in the public sector to 50%, in addition to increase from 50% to 80% the distribution of fuel in the service stations. In Ecuador, the Confederation of Indigenous Nationalities held a plurinational popular assembly to define a plan of action for the runoff election and the defense of the Sasha field. The convention aimed at establishing a consensus position with a view to the two candidates for the next ballot in April. Such as a unanimous position was not achieved during the first round due to divergences with the Amazonian groups. Several organizations of the Central Highlands supported the candidacy of President Daniel Noboa, while the National Federation of Farmers, Indigenous and Black organizations is leaning towards the campaign of Luisa Gonzalez. In this regard, CONAIE President Leonidas Itza reaffirmed his commitment to the democratic respect of all the positions within the movement. In Ecuador, according to the latest official damage assessment, the number of people affected by the rainy season exceeded 96,000, including more than 100,000 victims, 19 deaths and 100 injured. So far, 88 of the country's 24 provinces are still in a state of emergency, including the 6 that make up the Guayas coast, Los Rios, Manabí, El Oro, Esmeralda, Santa Elena, and the Andean provinces of Loja and Azuay, located in the southern part of the country. The province of Manabí has been the most affected by the rainy season, with 62,000 people. Between March 13 and 17, the National Secretary of Risk and Meteorological Prevention warns that high-intensity rainfall will continue in part of the country, especially in the coast and the south in the afternoon and early morning. And we have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English, there you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverage and much more. Follow our page and activate the notification button to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Fun a short break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to From the South. On Thursday, Russian defense forces liberated Sucha, a key town for Ukrainian forces in the Kursk province in Russia. According to the Russian Defense Ministry, Sucha was the largest locality that the Ukrainian armed forces managed to occupy during an offensive in August 2024. Since then, the town was used as the main logistics center through which Kyiv supplied its units in the neighboring settlements. In addition to Sucha, groupings of severed troops in the north have liberated the localities of Melovoy and Podol. At the same time, Ukrainian formations of several mechanized assault and territorial defense brigades were annihilated in Kursk. The defense ministers of France, Germany, the United Kingdom and Poland considered a proposal to establish a 30-day ceasefire in Ukraine with the possibility of being permanent. After a meeting in Paris, German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius informed that together with his counterpart they would hold a ceasefire for 1 month, but would work on making it possible to extend it permanently. On such an event, Russian President Vladimir Putin stressed that it should not be a brief truce, nor a pause to regroup forces and rearm, but a peace based on respect. The meeting took place a day after Ukraine accepted a plan proposed by the United States during talks in Saudi Arabia to establish a 30-day ceasefire. On Wednesday, the United Nations Special Rapporteur Michael Faki warned that the Zionist regime of Israel is carrying out an unprecedented famine campaign in the Gaza Strip. During a press conference in the city of Geneva, Switzerland, the rapporteur explained that by restricting access to humanitarian aid in the Palestinian enclave, Benjamin Netanyahu's government has carried out the fastest campaign in modern history. After the international rejection of his ethnic cleansing plan, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, affirmed that no Palestinian will be expelled from the Gaza Strip. During a meeting with the Irish Prime Minister at the White House, Trump contradictorily declared that no one is expelling any Palestinian from Gaza. This in response to a journalist's question about his plans to relocate to several neighboring countries some 2 million Palestinians who have suffered the aggressions of the Israeli army. In what appears to be a reversal in Trump's position on the location of Palestinians, Hamas spokesman Hassem Qassem stressed that this withdrawal reflects a change in the U.S. policy towards Gaza. In Pakistan, more than 400 people were taken hostage on the Jafar Express train by a group called the Baluchistan Liberation Army using explosives and suicide terrorists. The attack took place in a remote area of Baluchistan where at least 17 people were wounded. The Pakistani army managed to neutralize the 33 attackers and rescue the rest of the passengers, including women and children who were used as human shields. Interior Minister Mohsin Naqvi reported that the attackers used explosives on the railroad track to gain control of the train. Former Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte was handed over to the International Criminal Court on Wednesday after his arrival in the Netherlands. He is accused of crimes against humanity during his 2011 and 2019 anti-drug campaign in the Philippines. More than 250 people gathered outside the detention center in support of the former leader. The ex-president entered the detention center with an arrest warrant for alleged crimes against humanity in the Philippines. The former leader landed in the country after a stopover in Dubai, where he underwent a medical examination, and all passengers on the plane were issued with essential documents. And with this information, we have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net and join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram and TikTok as well. For TeleSUR English, I'm Alejandra Garcia. Thank you for watching.